Hello, meat eaters. This is your favorite doctor of education. My channel is called Take the Meat, Spit Out the Bones. I'll be sharing education research that has tons of meat, but you may find some bones in the message. Just throw those bones aside and focus on the meat of the video's message. Today, we will be discussing why I love paraprofessionals. Paraprofessionals are also called paraeducators and or teaching assistants, depending on your school district. They are basically the secret sauce in special education and in education in general. Paraprofessionals, some people say they're the sous chef. So here in this article by Costin Theo Harris et al., they talk about how paraprofessionals are basically the sous chef of a classroom, right, of literacy instruction, whereas the teacher is the chef, the paraprofessionals are the sous chef. So what does that actually mean? Why are they so valuable in a classroom, in a school? They are basically the ones hired to deal with oftentimes children who could be difficult in some respects, could be academically disadvantaged. They also could have a specific disability type where they have various challenges. So like if a child has autism spectrum disorder, they may be a runner, they may also be nonverbal, they can also display self-injurious behaviors. So paras are oftentimes used in pre-K classes. Oftentimes you always see like a para in a pre-K class, but then also you see paras mostly as one-to-ones, meaning they're attached to one child or two children or three. They could be a 1 to 2 children, 1 to 3 children, but oftentimes they're one-to-ones. And then there are classroom paras where they are a classroom para to like a pre-K class that could be gen ed or any special ed class. So it could be a ICT class, ICT meaning co-taught, where there's a general and a special educator in the classroom. It can, and that grade can be anywhere from 3K, 3 years old, to 12th grade. Or they can be in a so-called self-contained environment where there's just students with disabilities in the classroom and they're in a regular school in a 12 to 1-to-1, or there could be multiple paras. I've been in a classroom where they had 7 paras in the room with, I think, 10 or 11 children and a teacher, right? So they can be in a regular school, or they can also be in a more a school that has all children with students with disabilities, right? So paras are everywhere in special education, right? So if you're a special educator, especially a teacher, you're always working with multiple people. So paras will follow classes follow students to different classes. They also will follow their class. If they're in a self-contained class, if they're the classroom para, they'll also follow that class to like a specials class or a cluster class like music, art, but they also stay in the classroom with the regular teacher, or rather homeroom teacher, depending on where you are, however you identify them. So paras are very important. So yes, so they may deal with the children who may have varying issues, right? But they have really great talents. Like paras come to the table oftentimes not knowing anything about education, not knowing anything about special education. And they are writers, they're business owners, they're students, they're authors, right? I've met some paras and I'm like, hold on, you have several published books? All right now, you wouldn't know, right? Because sometimes they keep those talents secret in the building because, sometimes they don't want to, do some extra work, rightfully so, because they're not paid well. And we're gonna go into that, right? So paras have multiple talents, oftentimes are students, oftentimes have another full-time job that they leave schools to go to another full-time job because they're not paid well, right? So what are some of the responsibilities of paras which make them the secret sauce in education, especially in special education? They toilet, right? They toilet. I've been in a school where they did not provide teachers or paras gloves to toilet kids, and the parents had to buy their own gloves to toilet kids, right? Okay. And these are the injustices that do happen in the education system. So toileting, they make boards like display boards in the classroom. They check homework. They teach curriculum. I've seen paras teach full curriculums, run the classroom as good or even better than the teacher, right? So in some self-contained special ed classes, you may have 2, 3 grades in one class. So I've taught that gamut as well. Like I've taught 2, 3 self-contained, 3, 4, 5 self-contained, and I had one or multiple paras in my classroom. So they may even divide up the curriculum. Like a teacher may say, okay, I will teach the second grade math, or you teach the second grade math, the para, and then I teach the third grade math because that's a testing grade, right? So paras, TAs can be teaching curriculum, right? Also, sometimes if there are some paras in the room, or a para or several paras, and they may even have a teaching certificate, they're used to teach a class when the teacher is absent, right? They do busing. They also may even help kids in a cafeteria, sit with them in a cafeteria, hallway duties, walk kids to different classes. Like that was my first year of teaching, my para, she would walk the kids to the classroom to, like, pick them up from outside, bring them to the class, you know, bring them to the cafeteria. She was much better at that. I was never a good hallway teacher, right? Like I could not put them in a line. Like the line would be down the hallway and some students would be walking with me. Like I walk very fast. So all my students ended up walking extremely fast. So paras can do a number of things. They can call parents. They can talk to parents. Some school districts don't want them to talk to parents, right? So they can be in a part of the IEP meeting. They can be taking data on student behavior. They could be doing a whole array of things. They can be taking the attendance for the whole school. Sometimes principals may utilize paras to, like, be, a secretary, or, do other kind of admin responsibilities because they're really good at their job and they have different skill sets. Because paras come to any job in any school with a range, but oftentimes they are not paid well at all, right? So I remember being in a classroom where they had three paras, and those three paras' salaries together did not equal one teacher's salary, the teacher that was in the room. That is crazy. So they are so underpaid. And I've already talked about this, about teachers being underpaid, and education administrators being underpaid, but paras downright are the most underpaid people who work directly with kids, who teach kids. So actually, let's look at that right now. We're going to look at how much, actually, let me see. So we're going to look at, this is just a random school district that I have selected. This is in South Carolina, Charleston. So in Charleston, South Carolina, if you're starting off as a para, you are making, what is this? What is that number? $27,000, right? If you have 60 credits in school, if you have a bachelor's, you are starting off at $28,000. That's the first year. And your top salary, if you have some college, is $46,000 after 33 years of service. And if you have a bachelor's, $51,000. So, and this is Charleston, South Carolina. You have to work 33 years just to make $51,000. Let's think about that. When you think about the cost of living, that is very unfair, especially if you are working with kids and you can move mountains if you're a para, right? So if you're a para, you're working one-on-one with kids, doing small group instruction. You can be teaching kids how to read, right? You could be the barrier. You can relieve that barrier from a child not knowing how to read, not knowing how to write, and all those things, math and everything, right? So they are totally, totally, totally underpaid, under-resourced, right? So why else are paras so wonderful? They're wonderful because they really, they run after kids in the hallway. Like I remember one time I was at a school, this little boy ran up and down the steps. I'm chasing him. And then I saw a para that I was coaching, and it was like, oh, catch him, right? And then he ran after the child, right? Like paras are running after kids who are runners. We have those children who are runners. They do everything. right? Like anything that oftentimes the teachers don't want to do, the admin doesn't want to do, the para ends up doing, right? Which is why they need to be paid more. They also need to be educated more, right? They oftentimes don't know anything about students with disabilities, which is also not very good, right? This is the most vulnerable population in a school system. And oftentimes they're not being educated about students with disabilities. They're hired kind of sometimes off the street, some of them, right? And they don't know anything about curriculum. They don't know anything about behavior, academic supports. They may not know anything about students with ASD or learning disability or emotional disturbance, right? So they need to be educated a lot more. Also, too, they should have paid training systems, right, for paraprofessionals. Like the summer before they start a school, they need to be continuously trained, professionally developed, talking about special education. Also, there should be higher ed institutions who tailor programs specifically to develop paraprofessionals, right? And they should have a coach throughout the years and throughout years, right? To coach them every week or every 2 weeks throughout the school year to give them advice, be in the classroom with them, model things for them, right? But paras, you need to invest more monies in paras. They can make an impact. They're usually, like I said, working with small groups, working with the most vulnerable, one-to-one paras. They can yield higher achievement rates with kids. And they oftentimes, let me just say, some paras are better teachers than the actual teachers in the classroom, right? They know more, they know the students more, right? So, and they make a huge impact. Some people may argue, I remember reading a research article last week, and let me just say, and I am not discounting special educators at all, but they compared the effects of having a general educator and a special educator teacher, right, in a classroom. They compared a general educator with a TA, and they didn't really see that much of a difference in the outcomes of the students. Now, that is very interesting. And I will actually link that article also down below in the description section. But those are really interesting points when you think about paraprofessionals. Number one, they are the secret sauce in education, especially special education, and they need to be paid more and they need to be supported more. They need to be resourced. They need to be funded, right? And they need to be supported. They need to be educated, right? So they are pivotal to the success of students with disabilities, right? And we need to do better as a country in America to fund these people, right? Because $27,000 in America in any state is not good enough. And I can imagine if we look at New York, California, Florida, Miami, all the places that, cost of living is higher, and oftentimes people are not making that much, right? So this is very important. Thank you so much for listening. And please watch other videos that I have on this channel. Please subscribe, share, comment below. All right, I'll see you for the next one. Bye.